Hello again, Crack Lemonade here, and this is a part two to my gameplay for Power Rangers, the game on Super Nintendo. I was about to say Power Rangers, the movie, but we're not there yet. And I wanted to make this as a part two, um, to kind of give context to my first video where I say, um, I'm only talking about the show and not the comics, and just kind of give a little context to that. And also, secondarily, I was having audio issues, so this is probably like the fourth time I've recorded this specific thing. And it's entirely a skill issue. Um, Maybe I'll go over the audio setup later, or intended audio setup later. I'm trying something different this time to see the difference in audio quality, and also just trying to make it easier for myself in the long run. So, anyway, back to this. In the first video, I sounded kind of angry when I was saying I'm only talking about the show, not the comics or whatever. I forget exactly what I said. I was editing the audio, and I laughed really hard because of how angry I sounded. And I was like, this is perfect. I'm going to keep it. But at the same time, I did want to loop back around and be like, hey, this is not a knock against the comics. This is not anything against other media. It is just basically making sure that I am talking about one thing, and people who watch this is also referring to the same thing. The best example I would say would be like, hey, like, let's start a book club. We all want to be reading from the same book. Like, you don't want to be, reading from a different book that has different text on different pages. So at the same time, like when I'm talking about Power Rangers the show, I'm talking about the original run. I'm not familiar with the comics, and it's not a knock against the comics. I do think that it's an interesting concept to do like expanded universes on the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and as fans who become artists and writers, add context to things that aren't explained in the show, because there's a lot that's not explained in the show. And honestly, the purpose of me talking about Power Rangers, is to talk about some of the weird things that happens in the show that's not entirely explained, or just not explained at all, just happens and then just goes off into the ether. But I don't necessarily want to go episode by episode, which is why in theory I'm going to try to talk about characters. And in my head I want to talk about Tommy Oliver, because he's the best and most developed character in Power Rangers. I don't know if that's intentionally or unintentionally, but we can cross that, bridge when we get there. But we're not going to be talking about his character development because he has some interesting episodes, and it's just fun things to like again, I'm I think I said it in the first video. I have no intention of fixing Power Rangers. I don't know if my ideas for Power Rangers would make the show better. Um, and especially since I am using hindsight. I do not know, like, I don't know what direction um Power Rangers should have gone in, and I will have, like, maybe a video where I talk about, like, where I think Power Rangers should have gone, but I also just want to talk about um the characters. So, like, in episode one, yeah, episode one, I said Rita made a lot of sense because she was trapped in a trash can for 10,000 years. So she's like going on a rampage after being trapped and confined for such a long period of time. I mean, I would say it checks out. And even in talking about Rita, it's not specific episodes. Lord Zed will be a little bit easier to talk about, and I don't really want to get into that yet. And like I said, I don't want to go episode by episode because honestly, if you watched Power Rangers, a lot of episodes, nothing really happens. Like, I was rewatching the first 8 episodes, and episode 7 is a Yellow Ranger focus episode, and it was all just a dream. So nothing really happened in that episode. So I don't know. And Power Rangers is different. Like, Power Rangers in the 90s was different. Maybe if they did it now, I don't know how newer seasons were. But Power Rangers, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, was designed to be on TV almost every day during the week. So they shot a bunch of episodes back to back, and you didn't know what episode was coming on TV when. TV Guide was a book that you had to buy that came out once a month in the 90s, and it probably wouldn't have been useful to kids because it probably would cover more of the primetime shows or whatever. But that's probably the only place you would have gotten, like, a schedule for shows back in the 90s. And again, this show was airing every day during the week, and TV in the 90s is kind of different from TV now, where a lot of shows are bingeable and made for consumption one after another, where Power Rangers kind of isn't. Like, it's just like, it's on, it came on today, you get your 30 minutes of action, ends with the Zord doing the sword thing, slicing through enemies and exploding, and then the Rangers laugh, high five, or whatever at the end, and then you get the next episode, which is fine. It's great. It is one of, like, the peak shows in the 90s. It went hard. So in terms of talking about the show, it would be weird to go episode by episode. I think it's more interesting to me to watch Power Rangers and be like, hey, they really never gave any background into Zordon, and the way he disappears in Power Rangers Turbo and ultimately gets killed. It's some things to kind of unpack there, especially just you know I actually don't want to get into it now because I feel like I need to refresh myself on like how he exited the show, and then also it would require me watching like the end of Power Rangers in Space to where he was killed by Andros, and then all the villains were turned into good guys. But we'll get there. And in terms of Lord Zed, I want to talk about his first appearance and just kind of how he was as the main bad guy until Rita came back into the show and they got married. Because it's just interesting to me to look back at that and be like, oh, okay, Lord Zed wasn't as awesome as I remember. And when I talk about these things, I want to point to specific episodes. So, Lord Zed's episode is the Mutiny. Tommy's, off the top of my head, there are a couple episodes that I want to talk about. One being Return of the Green Ranger. And then there is Return of an Old Friend, which is where he comes back during Parents' Day and like Rita almost wins. But I haven't figured out how to talk about Rita yet because her arc goes through this span of 3 seasons, and it's very different from season 1 to season 3. So some of this stuff does require me going back and like rewatching some of it to keep it fresh on my mind. But at the same time, I do not want to be disrespectful to people who enjoy the Boom comics. It's just a different universe. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie, is a different universe. So it's just how I want to approach this. So there's going to be more to come, and hopefully this makes sense. I'll talk to you later.